Hello, my name is Dr. Larry Taylor. I'm with Windyday. I'm going to be making a presentation on back pain and climate change. Why am I giving this presentation? You might have back pain, or you might be worried about the climate, or maybe both. The goal was to teach young people to be electrical vehicle mechanics in Switzerland, but the oil lobby has censored this course in Switzerland, and so I'm giving it on internet. Who is the oil lobby? Well, there's Exxon and all of the other companies. There's the automobile industry, the chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry, and the financial industry. Formidable opponents. But seriously, aren't you too old to be teaching us anything? I might be old, but I have two children that are in school, and this is a birthday present for my mom. Their grandmother would have been 103 tomorrow. She taught me something about World War I. I am one person removed from World War I. Armistice Day was November 11th, 1918. At 11/11 on that day, they signed the treaty to end the war that was to end all wars. My mom remembered Armistice Day all of her life. People were singing, crying, hugging one another. Our last conversation that we had when she was 90 years old, she talked about that day. She was 3 years old. My mom remembered Armistice Day at her death. My sister said that it was December 12th and that she died at 11/11. She thought it was our mother's love for numbers because she was a math teacher. I knew it was a message. I dusted off a speech and I gave an anti-war speech at her funeral. It was the height of the Iraq War. The chapel was full of firemen that had responded at Columbine High School, and they didn't throw any shoes at me. Why haven't I given up? My experiences in life have made me a tough old bastard. And what are my experiences in life? I started off with surveying teams in Wyoming. Wyoming is one of the windiest states in America. Desert conditions that lead to sunny days. There's vast mineral wealth. There's coal, oil, minerals, uranium, and tar sands. Just for a history lesson, my mom's parents were born in the 1880s. Their parents met getting off a boat from Italy. They moved west to Missouri, but they could have gone to Wyoming. They were first-generation Americans. Her parents were given birth certificates. The original people were given prison sentences or killed. I'm two people removed from the Indian Wars. The relics of the original homesteads, since it was desert, you saw a lot of the relics. Every ranch had a wind turbine. Every front door faced south. I worked with the coal mines and railroads. I helped plan out the largest coal mine in the world in the Powder River Basin. And the Wyoming Prairie. Lost in that prairie was a forage to find this coal seam. And one of my first jobs was to find the original drill hole. So my boss went up on one of those little hills with a Swiss surveying instrument, and he sent me out and he guided me, and I had a wooden stake, and he said, we have to find that hole so that we can build this mine. And he got me directly on the hole. When I hit the hammer on the stake went down, it swallowed into the earth, and that was one of the richest coal seams in the world. The Powder River Basin, in 1984, there's a satellite shot, and in 2014, you can see the marks of the mine. And you can see that they changed the landscape a little bit. And they told me that they were going to clean up the mine after they were done. So I'm waiting for the cleanup to start. I was also in Exxon headquarters in Denver in the 70s. They had just produced a climate study. They saw that CO2 was rising due to fossil fuels. They saw that it was a problem. They grabbed the report from my hand and they hid it in a drawer. I should have said something. I am saying something now. Sorry I'm so late. I went on after to the University of Wyoming. I started off in the engineering department, but I also had contacts with climate and pre-med, and I eventually went into chiropractic. I had a lot of friends in the petroleum engineering department, and the topic of the day was peak oil. We didn't think that we would have enough oil that was easy enough to reach places, and we might have to look at alternate sources. there was fracking and tar sands that they talked about already in the 1970s. The experts thought it would be stupid to use these sources as being too costly. What's fracking? Fracking, you can see this is close to where I grew up. Each one of those wells has hundreds of wells coming off of it, and there's a pipeline going to each of those. And financial people say they want to have a 30-year return of investment, even though only the first frac makes money. The rest is a Ponzi scheme. This is a photo of a tar sand spill from a pipeline, and this is called a successful cleanup. What they do is they put sand and they grow some wheatgrass and they put that down and they say it's cleaned up. And that is some of the most toxic chemicals in the world. It's impossible to clean up bitumen. I had a relative that was teaching courses at the climate science department in Wyoming. I had a lot of discussions with his department. I was first exposed to greenhouse gases and its effects. He later went on to work for NOAA. Neck pain led me to a chiropractor, and he asked me, why not become a chiropractor? My grandfather was a chiropractor, but he died when I was a baby, so I had never met him. And so I changed my major to pre-med, and I became a chiropractor. So that led to another part of my life as a therapist, because of my shoulder problem, I am no longer doing chiropractic. You might ask, what's a therapist? I might ask, who has back pain or neck pain, shoulder or arm pain, or headaches or hip or leg pains? I also had back pain. The more that I did for it, the worse it got. And then I found the secret of low back instability. Sometimes doing less is better. With low back instability, the ligaments of the low back can become too stretched. This leads to excessive movement of the two last vertebrae, which irritates the nerve going to the gluteal muscles. These patients often have chronic pain. It leads to muscle atrophy, low back instability. On the left, you see a vertebrae with the dark mass, which is muscle. And on the right, you see that it's replaced by a whitish substance, which is fat. This is a fatty atrophy because the nerve going to the muscle is irritated. You can live with low back instability, but you have to start by stabilizing your back. Then you have to strengthen your gluteal muscles, but the low back instability irritates the nerve, so you have to listen to the nerve. And so you should do less gluteal exercises. And you have to do daily exercises. I'm sure that's California. So you have to start by stabilizing your low back. There's two muscles that go across that part of the body, the gluteal muscle and the piriformis muscle. And as it's sitting down, you do an isometric exercise of each one. You want to push your leg down as if you want to stand up. You push your foot into the floor for 5 seconds as you breathe out. And then you want to push your foot against the other foot for 5 seconds as if you want to push it away, but that's a post. 2 movements equals 1 repetition, and you should do no less than 1 a day. Then, once you've stabilized, you want to strengthen your gluteals. And I found that with low back instability, a patient should only do 1. You're trying to rehabilitate a muscle and a nerve. A lot of people think 10 or 25 is a good number. No, you should only do 1. After abdominal muscles, and often are done wrong. I learned in the 60s that you should never put your feet under a bar, but there's people that do that still today. There's a neurophysiological approach. The foot should be flat on the ground. The toes should be contracted to relax the front of the thigh, because when you contract the toes, that contracts the muscle behind the thigh. And then you also do abdominals as you're breathing out. When you breathe in, the belly expands. That means the abdominals relax. As you breathe out, they contract. So do it on expiration. There's 4 parts of the abdominal muscles. There's a transverse, the erectus, and 2 obliques. So let's put it into practice. For the transverse abdominals, you push down with your toes. As you breathe out, when you're done breathing out, you pull your belly in as if you want to flatten it against the ground for 5 seconds, and then you breathe in again. The rectus abdominals, you put your hands behind your neck to support your neck, but you don't pull on the neck. You want to push your toes into the ground, and that contracts the muscle behind. As you breathe out, you just lift up your rib cage and you approach it towards the knees. And you look at the ceiling above you. For the obliques, you pull your left shoulder towards your right knee or your right shoulder towards your left knee, but you still want to look up at the ceiling. You don't want to pull on your neck. There's also the deep neck flexors. They can be combined with the transverse abdominals. Imagine there's a pencil on your nose, but it's 5 millimeters too short to reach the ceiling. You want to lift up your head and draw a small circle in one direction and repeat in the other direction. 5 millimeters, you can say half an inch. This is the stabilization of the low back. She's pushing down and against. Now she's pushing down with the other leg and against. 10 seconds each side. Here's a gluteal. She breathes out and she lifts up her pelvis and she tightens her buttocks and she's done. It doesn't take a long time. Abdominals. She's doing the abdominal transverse. She breathes out and she has her toes tightened. She pulls her belly in for 5 seconds. Then hands behind her neck. She breathes in, she breathes out, and she lifts up her rib cage towards her knees. It's a very small movement, and she's not pulling on her neck at all. There she's doing an oblique with the left chest towards the right knee, and then the right chest towards the left knee. And it takes about that long. Here's the neck. She just lifts up, turns in one direction and the other, and then it's done. 30 seconds for lazy people. What I decided to do was I want to do it every day. As I lay in bed, I do one gluteal. I push with my 2 toes and do the transverse abdominals. I do the neck circles. Sitting in the bed, I do my stabilization exercise. These are the 3. I don't have the drawing for the neck. But those are 3 exercises. Takes me 30 seconds. When I go in to shave, I have a tennis ball and I massage my feet. I start the day and my exercises are done. How often do I need to do the exercises? Every day. 30 seconds won't kill you, but every day. Don't skip a day, and I think you understand. You can see why I became a climate activist now, even though I'm a therapist, and I'm proposing the Windyday Concept. My question in Wyoming 40 years ago, why can't we use the wind and sun as sources of energy? When I said that to people in the coal and the oil industry, I was not a model employee. Today, many people have the same questions. The CO2 levels in 1975 was 314 parts per million. Today, 414 parts per million, and it's going up rapidly. When was it this high before? 23 million years ago. There are crocodiles in North Dakota. The average temperature at the North Pole was 23 degrees centigrade, about 74 degrees. The ocean at the equator was 50 degrees. It was hot. It was over 120 degrees. We are in a climate emergency. There's been talk about the Blue Ocean event, where there's going to be no sea ice on the Arctic Ocean. In 1992, when the IPCC first started, they predicted it for 2100, your grandchildren's grandchildren. In 2007, they saw that it was warming faster than predicted, so they thought it was going to be 2080, your grandchildren's children. In the 2018 IPCC report, maybe in 2050. Most climate scientists disagree with the IPCC. It's possibly going to be in 2023 or 2022. There was a video by Dr. Paul Beckwith where he talked about the Arctic Blue Ocean event. When, then what? It's a YouTube video of September 20th, 2018. He mentioned the first event probably in 2023 for about 1 week, then progressively longer and no more ice within 10 years, so by 2033. This is the sea ice minimum of September 15th, which is normally, historically, the day. And just to give a little bit of geography of the Arctic Ocean, you can see there's the thick ice over the deep Arctic basin, and it's surrounded by low-level seas, the continental shelf seas, which are only 50 to 100 meters deep, even 300 to 400 kilometers away from the land. This year, though, there's something strange that happened. We had a second sea ice minimum, and NASA said that the 23rd of September there was another minimum. These are from Polar Portal, Denmark, a Denmark site. This is unprecedented to have two minimums in 1 year. But since then, you might ask, what were the years where we had the lowest? That was in 2007 and 2012. 2007, you can see that there is the large part of the, especially the Beaufort, the Chukchi, and the East Siberian Sea were open water, but there's still a blockage of the Northeast Passage. In 2012, the Northeast Passage opened up. There's almost a complete Northwest Passage also, but there is still quite a bit of the thick ice. This was taken from September 1st. October 1st in 2007 on the left, you can see that there is still the Northwest Passage blocked, but there is still a large quantity of open sea. In 2012, there's the open sea, and it had become the lowest year that we had had. But by November, you could see that the ice came back and the passage was blocked. Just to show you 2016 and 2018. On 2016 was a low year. It was lower to begin with than 2018. And you can see that the Northwest Passage was open. In 2018, we had the Northeast Passage open the whole time. This was September 1st. October 1st, this was unprecedented. Even since the Arctic winter has started, the ice has been melting and the sea ice has not started to freeze again. And this is taken from their site today. And you can see there is some very, very thin ice to the north, but I would not schedule a hockey game on that sea ice. I suggested that we might have a blue sea event, and Dr. Beckwith is in agreement with me. He calls it a boss event. I think it's going to be possible in July or August of 2019. And my theory is there's a new heat current from the Pacific under the thick ice causing the Svalbard jacuzzi. Where's the Svalbard jacuzzi? It's to the northeast of Greenland, and it's an area of ice of the sea temperature, and you can see that it's a very, very hot spot that's 18.6 degrees actually. Last winter, it never went below 15 degrees in the Arctic winter, for fuck's sake. We have signed the Paris Accords where we said, keep it in the ground, keep the fossil fuels in the ground. If we were respecting Paris, there would be no new investments in fossil fuel infrastructure. Our financial institutions should recalculate their worth because there's what's called abandoned assets. But Trump pulled out of Paris. Too bad. Trump was exposing the hypocrisy of the world's leaders because who was respecting Paris? No one. But aren't we already changing? I see stories, we're doing a good job with renewable energy. Our energy use since 2010, we've added 160 million tons equivalent of renewable energy, but at the same time, we've added 800 million tons equivalent of additional fossil fuel energy. We're adding fossil fuel at a rate 5 times higher than renewable. CO2 production is increasing exponentially. The industry wants us to change by 2050. Why 2050? The financial industry says so. Investment in fossil fuels for another 30 years. They want that return. The climate is worsening yearly. In fact, it's now worsening monthly and even weekly and daily. We can't wait another 30 years. What can we do? Renewable energy is intermittent. Battery storage is a solution, and EVs require batteries. And I'm proposing the Windyday Concept. Production in China requires shipping, and we need to build factories locally. We need to train young people to install solar panels, build and repair EVs, because it's not evident to repair EVs, and we want to plant local farms for food and clothing. How do we finance it? Well, this comes back to my mom's birthday present. November 11th, 2018 is going to be the 100-year commemoration of the end of World War I. The U.S. and their allies are in 8 declared wars. They're in 76 police actions in different countries. And if we cut the bullshit, we're in 136 countries fighting poor brown or black people for their oil and resources. The U.S. military budget declared is $780 billion, undeclared is $6 trillion. Don't worry, that money is safe. It's safer than the brown or the black people that we're bombing. I want to give Trump his military parade. I want to buy a one-way ticket for every U.S. soldier to Washington, D.C. They can have every tank, missile, and Humvee during that parade. They have all the time they need to pass and review, eyes left, and I will applaud. The day after, they need to ask Congress for money for a return ticket and for authorization. There has not been a declared war since World War II. No money, no war, no authorization, no war. We need to build battery factories, and I propose the Chinese approach, which is labor-intensive. Batteries are metal construction with chemicals added. New technologies use less cobalt. We need battery factories in Europe, North and South America, Australia, Africa, Asia outside of China, and South Korea. Can we change by 2023? Sadly, battery production will take 5 years to catch up. But where do I get the Windyday approach? I take it from the OECD countries and the International Energy Agency. In 2010, they signed a pledge to have 1 million EV chargers in Germany by 2014, and in France by 2015. 40% of the vehicles sold in 2017 would be electric. Today, less than 2% are electrical, and less than 15,000 chargers in Germany and France. We need also to build solar panel factories. Building locally can increase employment. Installing requires further training. This is going to give jobs for our young people. We should talk about animals. They're the most abundant life forms. They're cows, pigs, and chickens. And livestock are a major source of methane. Most of our farmlands are used for feeding livestock. Being a vegetarian is ecological. And I propose a new agricultural approach. Grow food locally, decrease chemical products, plant hemp and linseed, useful plants for oils, clothes, building materials to replace plastic. It's 7 times better than trees as a carbon trap for CO2. We have to take care of our topsoil. There's a microfilamentous structure that is life in the topsoil. Insects and worms will feed the birds. Our topsoil is sterile, it's dead. There's no birds found on agricultural lands. I took some photos from the western Switzerland. On the left is a sugar beet farm. On the right is a bio farm. But you can see there's no insects, and of course there's no birds, and that microfilamentous structure is gone. My dad, when he grew up in West Texas in the 1920s, the farmers were forced to grow more hemp. I am one person removed from a non-plastic world. Johnny Appleseed. I preface this by saying that actually in Japan, cherry blossoms are blooming now. John Chapman threw apple seeds everywhere he went in America. Let's do the same thing with hemp, but let's start now. Whatever grows during the winter can help the soil, and we might have the first harvest next spring, and maybe we can get that microfilament infrastructure back. We need to talk about wind turbines because, especially in Switzerland, they're very underexploited. There's a lot of opposition due to wind turbine syndrome, which is a psychogenic illness, which is most of the symptoms are suggested by owners of coal mines. Wind turbines, there's a lot of reasons for wind turbines. There's structures that generate electricity. There's structures that generate money. Against the Swiss mountains are too pretty, and who's going to pay for cleanup costs after a wind turbine is done? Even though it does last 20, 25 years, and you could always replace it with another wind turbine. But I'm going to be showing you some pictures. I hope you're not too offended by these pictures of wind turbines on Swiss mountains. And this is a wind turbine. Oh, sorry. That's not a wind turbine. That's a ski lift. Huh. Okay, I'll show you the next wind turbine. Oh, that's a ski restaurant. Maybe the Swiss mountains aren't so sacred after all. You can also have accidents with wind turbines, and you could see this is oxygen. Oh, sorry, that's an oil tanker fire. Sorry, my mistake. I was just fooling with you. These are wind turbine photos, and this is one by a hydroelectric dam. This is one in the air, and this is a farm with growing right up next to the wind turbine. And I thank you for your listening. And my name is Dr. Larry Taylor. I just want to suggest I'm familiar with Columbine. These two photos behind me, these paintings behind me, is someone that was killed in Dijon, Switzerland, by someone that did a shooting. And so I know that's part of my life, my experiences. Thank you for listening.